Give me 2 minutes, guys.
मैं मिले
Open to
टच
my
पे डाला
system. Don't know.
और इसको पन्ने देते पन्ने दो
पनियों न पीबो
पन्ने पिए
एक है ना बोतल वहीं रख लिया कर ठंडा पानी पिया करो कितना पीबा तू उसका ले ले खुद और दे अब ना ले हम रख दे रखा
वही दिखता रहो तो घर चमड़िया का डेड़ा
कहाँ रखे
Unmute Bihari.
वही पिखाई हम ना काबू हम का रखे हमारा होगा
कपड़ा मांग
Okay, guys. So we'll start the session now, right? So I'm presenting my screen. Screen is visible, guys. Please kindly confirm.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So sorry for the delay, guys. Okay. So where we are? So in yesterday's session, we are going to discuss, or we discuss regarding the sprint backlog, right? So in today's session, we are going to discuss regarding the user stories, right? So what is mean by user story exactly? So user story is nothing but the in one word we can say it is nothing but the requirements, right? So that is we call it as the user story, right? So what it contains exactly user story. So what is mean by user story? So basically the user story contains two things here. So user story having two things. The first thing is the acceptance criteria. And second one is the description. Kindly mute, guys. These two things will is contains in the user story, right? So what is meant by acceptance criteria and what is meant by description here? So description is nothing but the what exactly the user wants, right? So it is the information, right? It is the information about what user wants, about what user wants. That is nothing but the uh, description, right? And what is here acceptance criteria means? Kindly mute, guys. And what is mean by acceptance criteria here? So acceptance criteria is nothing but the there are some scenarios, and when this scenario is true, so the system is generating some output, desired output, right? When that scenario got true, right? So that is nothing but the acceptance criteria. Let's say suppose I am giving one example regarding the user story here. So how exactly the user story means, right? So let's say suppose same example I am taking here regarding user story. So that is Gmail application, right? So in Gmail application, let's say one user story is there, right? So let's say suppose 1 second. So I am taking one example regarding user story. So suppose in the Gmail application, the user story is, let's say this is the user story. So I'm writing in second here user story, right? So what is user story? So let's say to design the login page of Gmail application. So basically this is the user story, right? So for this user story, what is acceptance criteria and what is description? So that also I am telling you. So here the description, let's say for this user story, the description is, so as a user I want to log in to Gmail application, right? So that I can use Gmail application. right? So this is the description criteria. So we already saw that. So what is exactly the description criteria means? What is the description means? So it is the information about the what user wants and what is the desired outputs, right? So what user wants in the description here. So user want to log into the particular Gmail application that user wants, right? So for that, the user can use the Gmail application, right? So this is the one part of the user story. So user story contains the description and acceptance criteria. So what is acceptance criteria? That we are going to discuss. So example for the acceptance criteria. So let's say regarding this user story, that is to design the login page of the Gmail application. So what are the acceptance criteria? So acceptance criteria is nothing but the it is the predefined requirement, right? So that we have to fulfill or that we have to meet in order to make the user story complete. That is nothing but the acceptance criteria, right? So acceptance criteria is nothing but the predefined requirement from the client or customer, right? So acceptance criteria also which is provided by the user. So for this user story, the acceptance criteria should be, so let's say the acceptance criteria we can say verify that user is able to access the Gmail application using valid username and valid password. This is the one acceptance criteria, and both username and password is mandatory. This is also second acceptance criteria regarding this user story. Third one is, suppose, and third one is verify that login button is enabled only when username and password are entered, right? So this acceptance criteria which is provided by the client or customer. Let's say for the Gmail application here, the acceptance criteria is, it is clearly mentioned that after providing the valid username, right? So valid username and here valid password, the login button is enabled only after providing the valid username and valid password. Before that, the login button is not enabled, right? So that is clearly mentioned in the acceptance criteria, right? So according to acceptance criteria, we have to do the testing, right? So because in the user story it is clearly mentioned that what is the description and what is the acceptance criteria, right? According to acceptance criteria, we are going to test the application or we are going to test that particular module, right? So let's say the next acceptance criteria. So suppose the next acceptance criteria should be suppose, so verify that user hit login button without entering the username and password. So what happens in that case? Then system or that particular application uh, should show one message. Show a message. So what message that is? please provide valid username and password, right? That message should be appear on the screen after entering the login button if username field is empty and the password field is empty, right? So that is also mentioned in the acceptance criteria. That means, so user story is very important for us, because according to user story, on the basis of user story, we are going to perform the different testing, right? So in the user story, all the what exactly the customer wants, that also mentioned description and acceptance criteria, and according to that we are going to uh, test the application or system, right? So that is nothing but the user story. So I am writing some theory regarding user story here. So what exactly the user story means, right? So basically the first point is, so user stories or user story. User stories are the functional requirement for the module development, right? And second part is, so user story contains two things. First one is acceptance criteria, and second one is description, right? And also the one thing I forgot to tell you, each and every user story having the story points. So what is mean by story point? So that also I am going to tell. So each and every user stories having story points, right? So what is mean by story point? That also I am going to discuss, right? So here first one is acceptance criteria, right? What is mean by acceptance criteria here? So acceptance criteria is nothing but there are some scenarios, right? When these scenarios are true, then system generated desired output. That is nothing but the acceptance criteria. So in this case, let's say the suppose this is the acceptance criteria, right? Second one, this one, fourth one. So here what is the acceptance criteria here? So user is, suppose user is put this field is empty, this is username also put empty, and here also put empty, right? So in that case, what exactly the system will generate here? So system is generating the desired output as user wants, as per the client requirement. That means user will system will show the message, that is please provide the valid username and password, right? So that is nothing but the acceptance criteria, right? So acceptance criteria definition is, there are some scenarios, when these scenarios are true, and on the basis of that scenario, the system will generate the desired output, right? As per the client requirement. That is nothing but the acceptance criteria, right? And the description is nothing but the So description is what? So description is nothing but it is the information about what user want and what is desired output, right? So that is nothing but the description here, right? So we can say this is nothing but the uh, user stories, right? Regarding the user story, right? And we can say one more thing regarding user stories. So user story is nothing but the or acceptance criteria is nothing but the it is the predefined uh, requirement, that is nothing but the acceptance criteria, right? So one more thing I am writing regarding acceptance criteria here. So acceptance criteria is nothing but the we can say set of predefined requirements. In one word, we can say that is nothing but the acceptance criteria, right? So and next one is user story point, right? So what is mean by story point here? So here story point is nothing but the time required to complete the user story, right? That is nothing but the story point. Let's say same user story here. So user story here we can take this is the our user story, right? To design the login page of Gmail application, this is the user story, right? So each and every user story having the story point. So what is mean by story point here? To complete the user story, time required to complete the user story, that is nothing but the story point here. So here the time is nothing but the developer times and tester time, the combination of both. Here first I am writing time required to complete the user story, right? That is nothing but the story point. And here the developer time plus tester time, so that is nothing but the story point. So how we can calculate the story point, right? So here it is depends on the company to company. So some companies are saying that, or some companies are taking the one story point equals to 1 day, right? And in some organization they are following one story point equals to 1 hour, right? So it's also depends on the company, but most of the companies are following the one story point equals to 1 day, right? So that is nothing but the user story, right? So before starting any sprint or any user story, so we have to assign the story point to that particular user story. Let's say, so developer will say to complete that particular user story, they required 4 user story point. That means 4 days they want or they required, right? So in that case, that state tester will say he will complete that particular user story in 2 days. That means here the story point of that particular user story is 6 days here, or six story point we can say, right? So story point is calculated on the basis of the time required for the developers to complete the user story and the time required for tester to complete the user story. The combination of tester times and the developer times, that is nothing but the story point. So each and every user story having different story point. Suppose let's say that user story is not complex, right? So we are developing the inbox module, right? So inbox module is very easy to develop, right? So in that case, what happens? The developer will say it will complete in 2 story point, that is 2 days, and in 1 day the tester will complete that user story, right? That means the story point of that particular user story is 3 here, right? So like that, we'll decide the story point here, right? So we have to give the story point in the particular sprint wise, or for each and every uh, user story, right? So that is nothing but the, we can say, user story, right? The next thing is the test case design. This is also very important part.
Uh, Hi, sir. Sir, I want to know exactly. I mean, I'm not able to understand what is the exact difference between a description and a, user story. Sorry,
This,
acceptance criteria. Sorry, acceptance criteria and a description, because they both belongs to the requirement gathering, right? It holds the requirement. So how exactly it is different?
no, no. So this is the part of the user story, na? Acceptance criteria and description is the part of the user story.
Correct. Description also holds the requirements. User acceptance criteria also
No,
holds
no,
the.
no. Description is nothing but the information regarding that particular user story. Only the information, 1 line or 2 line information is there. What exactly the customer or client wants to particular that user story. That is nothing but the description.
Okay.
Right? Suppose you are purchasing any mobile,
Mm-hmm.
you are buying any mobile. So in that there is a description is mentioned in the suppose let's say you are purchasing in Amazon, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the Amazon portal. So
Okay.
Samsung mobile is there,
Mm-hmm.
and in the below there is a description is there, right? Description
Mm-hmm.
is provided. So RAM should be that, memory should be this, camera
Details.
should be details. That
Mm-hmm.
is nothing but the description, right? What
Mm-hmm.
exactly the information regarding that particular, here also regarding this user story, what user exactly wants, right?
Okay. Okay.
From that user story, that is nothing but the description. And acceptance criteria is nothing but the, to complete that particular user story. So what exactly, suppose let's
Like
say,
all inputs, what all
right,
inputs you need.
suppose this is the username field, right?
Uh-huh.
So in acceptance criteria, the client or customer clearly mention that this username field must accept only the characters, right?
Okay.
Only
Okay.
characters, not
Limitations.
symbols, not special symbols are allowed. So
Mm-hmm.
that also already mentioned in the particular acceptance criteria. Means only here accepted the characters we have to accept. No,
Okay.
no the numbers and not the other things
Okay.
special. That is nothing but the acceptance criteria. Now clear?
Yeah. Yeah. It is clear, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Then next is very important. That is nothing but the test case design, right? Test case design. So basically, so on the basis of user story, we have to write the test cases, or we have to design the test cases, right? So most of the organization, they are following the Excel sheet to write the test cases, right? So how we can write the test cases, right? So what is mean by test case here? So test case is nothing but the, it is the set of actions performed by the tester to verify the particular functionality. That is nothing but the test case, right? So let's say suppose the login functionality is there, Facebook login functionality is there, right? So in this Facebook login functionality, what happens? So how we can write the test case? So let's say first we have to, let's say I'm opening the Facebook page, so we can, this is the login phase of Facebook, right? So this is the basically the login page of Facebook. So if you want to write the test case for this login page, so how we can write, right? So in user story, the client already mentioned that what is the acceptance criteria for this username field, right? Suppose they want this, in this username field, accept only the characters, not the symbols and numbers, right? So while writing the writing the test cases, right, we have to write the test cases, negative test cases and positive, right? So how we can write the test cases? Suppose first first step is for writing the test cases. There is the criteria is there for the test case writing, or there is the template. So we have to use the template for writing the test cases. The first we have test case ID, right? Then we can say description is there, right? Then steps are there, test steps are there, right? Then prerequisite are there, what we require, right? After that there is the actual result is there, right? And expected result is there. So in detail we are going to discuss these things, but just I am giving the overview regarding this. So how we can write the test case for the Facebook login page here? So first we have to write the test case ID. Suppose test case ID is uh, TCFV001. This is our test case ID. So this test case ID is very unique because in later stage we have to identify what exactly this test case ID, right? So that's why this test case ID is unique for each test case, right? So like that we have to, this is the our software or our project name, this is the test case, and this is the ID number, right? So like that we have to write the test case ID. This is the unique thing we have to write. So here first step we have to perform here to enter the valid URL, or we can say hit the URL, right? First we have to put the valid URL of that, this is the URL, right? First step here we have to perform, right? After that, what happens? We have to enter valid username for login to that particular application. This second step we have to perform here, right? To log into that particular Facebook application. Then next thing, the third step we have to perform here, we have to perform valid password here, right? So this is the positive scenario or positive test case, right? And after that, fourth step, click on login button, that we have to perform, right? So that all the things which is mentioned in the test case, what we are going to perform while testing, right? So that is nothing but the that things we have to do in the manual testing. So what is written in the test case? So while executing the test case, so how we can execute the test case? So here we are executing test case means what we written in the test case, that we have to follow, right? What are the steps which is written in the test cases that we have to follow? And if suppose we are, what we are expecting and what actually we are got, so that is not matching, the mismatch between actual result and expected result is happens, In that case, we are going to log the defect. That means there is the defect in that particular user story or in that particular module, right? So then we are going to log the defect. So that's why in that way we are going to do the manual testing, because here we don't need any instrument or any tool here to do the testing, right? Because we are just doing the manually things here. Suppose let's say there is a username, randomly we are providing any username, or there is the some uh, which is mentioned in the acceptance criteria. Suppose in acceptance criteria the client wants here the username should be only uh, 6 to 12 characters username, right? More than that and less than that is not accepted. So we have to do here, putting the this acceptance criteria, or keeping this acceptance criteria in mind, we have to do the testing in manual testing, right? So that happens in the manual testing, right? That's why the test cases is very very important. If we are missing some point here, and in later stage the our application is giving some bug, so this is very very risky for us, right? That's why the standard test cases we have to write while writing the test cases, right? So that is nothing but the test case design. So here while writing the test cases, we have to follow two techniques, right? First one is the boundary value analysis, and second one is the equivalence class partitioning. So what is mean by boundary value analysis, BVA, and ECP, that we are going to discuss in next session, right? Or upcoming session. But these two techniques, or there are different techniques are there. Error guessing also there. Error guessing techniques also there. That some most of the times we have to follow error guessing, right? So means we are just guessing the error, and according to that we have to write the test cases, right? So what exactly the test case design means, that I am writing some theory